In this world, nothing can said to be certain except death, taxes, and an Ohio State quarterback commit getting an invite to the Elite 11 finals. Who is this player? Air Noland, and this young man shined over the weekend.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes for the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Tuesday, May 16th in the year 2023, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. During today's show, we'll welcome Brian Smith to the show for the very first time. Brian is Locked On's football recruiting analyst. Brian and I go over what he witnessed from Air Noland in the Elite 11 Regional on Saturday and what makes Eddrick Houston, a talented defensive end, wanted by the Ohio State Buckeyes. It's fun to bring back our recruiting updates back to the show, and we got a lot of good stuff here with Brian and I. You don't want to miss it. And joining us now here on Locked On Buckeyes, it is Brian Smith. Brian is Locked On's football recruiting insider. Brian Smith, welcome to Locked On Buckeyes.
Hey, man, thanks for you for having me. Looking forward to talking some football. The Buckeyes definitely recruit a whole lot of players down here in Florida where I'm from.
Yes, they do. And I know over the next few months, Brian and I will be discussing some of the talented players from South Florida. Some of you that have been around for our recruiting updates realize you can't go 2 weeks without talking about somebody who's down in that part of the country. Before we get into the update for today, Brian, let us know a little bit about yourself, what you're doing, your background in covering recruiting and things like that.
I've been around recruiting games since basically the internet got rolling. Was with the original Rivals crew in the late 90s. I've been in the background doing scouting stuff for a long time. Got back into it heavily a few years ago, right around COVID. And I just basically drive around Florida, Georgia, Alabama, watching high school football players run into each other. That's what I do for a living. So scouting is the most fun thing. I just got back from a high school, Monsignor Pace in Miami today. I went out to see Jeremiah, a certain player that the Ohio State fan base knows, about a week or so ago. And it's a lot of fun, man. I can never get enough film study, but it's always best to go out and see it live.
You know, that see it live part is the thing that people like myself love, and people that are listening or watching, they'll love it as well. But you say you get to drive around and watch people play football. To some people, that sounds like a dream job, Brian. You're doing that every day. You're living out what may be your dream job, which is amazing to think about.
I can't imagine really. That's the best fit for me. I don't, outside of the winning lottery ticket just showing up at my door. I mean, if you got that, we'll trade. Other than that, I'm good. So yeah, it is a blast. And when I tell people what I do, I always get some big eyes. And it takes a lot of miles and a lot of time on the road to get there. Dixie is big, but especially covering the state of Florida, there's so many great games, so many great players. It's just a blast.
Yeah, it's definitely a blast. And we'll be looking to hear more about that insight you'll bring, especially during the football season when we get to that part of the year. But over the weekend, I was watching and I saw in the group chat, saw some tweets. You were at the Elite 11, the regional competition over the weekend. Ohio State quarterback commit Air Noland was there. And this young man, I would say he shined in this event because he got an invite to the Elite 11 finals. What did you witness from him over the weekend?
I would say three things stood out. One, I knew was going to happen, and that's just accuracy. I've known him for a few years. He plays for Cam Newton's 7-on-7 team. And even as a freshman in high school, I covered his 15U team at a tournament, just followed him around. I'm like, who the hell is that guy? And immediately they said, like, even Cam's like, hey, you know, this is a guy. And I watched him throw. I watched him make second and third level decisions, look off the safety, etc. So even 3 years of watching him, he was doing that when he was a freshman. And now the arm strength, the height, and all the power is there too. He still has the same delivery, but with more zip. and he just puts it where he wants, play after play after play. And that's what Elite 11 is about, accuracy. That's his biggest attribute. And then competitiveness. He doesn't like to lose a rep. He's not a talker. He's not a talker. He goes out and shows you, and he just walks off. He's very calm, cool, and collected with that. I was kind of curious to see if he would be that way under the lights of, elite. He doesn't get bigger than Elite 11 for a high school quarterback recruit. He didn't change anything. I mean, I pulled up at the same time he did, and we walked in together. It was no different than me being at a Langston Hughes practice. And, that's his high school. He just has the same even keel demeanor, which is something I don't think you can really teach. That's an inner strength. And he's had a great high school program. They just won state last year in Georgia. They won 6A. But he's a rare guy in that regard because mentally he's more like a 25-year-old than he is a 17-year-old.
And that's a huge thing when we think about it, because Ryan Day is looking for guys that are somewhat mature. Now, you're going to ask some guys that are just crazy talented to have to mature. You're recruiting guys that are 15, 16, 17. They're not going to have that level of maturity. But on the football field, it sounds like Air Noland has a level of maturity, but also an ability to just stay cool, calm, and collected, like you mentioned earlier. That's what Ohio State football fans want, because things are going to get tough. The lights will get bright. We talk about it every year. Penn State, Michigan, those games are going to be tough, and you want a quarterback in those games at the moment, or the moment might not be too big for them. You don't want the lights to be too bright. And it sounds like, at least at the high school level, I don't know what kind of college guy he'll be. We can project that. But it sounds like right now, when you talk about the guys in his class, he's up there because, one, he's uber talented, but he's able to stay cool, calm, and collected during big events like he did over the weekend.
I have no doubt that he will adjust to college just fine. I've known him a long time, so I'm biased.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's the same thing every time I see him. That consistency is incredibly rare, as you pointed out, for a teenager.
Correct.
How many teenagers did you grow up with that you thought were acting more like 25-year-olds? But you could count them on maybe 3 fingers?
Probably, yeah.
And now he's your star quarterback. That's why there are so few, and that's why he had 40 offers or whatever the hell it was. He earned it. And his delivery, everything he does, the way he trains, the way he carries himself is to get to the National Football League, period. And he's been an Ohio State fan because he liked how Ryan Day and the program kind of carried the quarterback torch here recently, and it's a fit. So I don't see this being a problem. He will come in and compete. He will come in and work, and he will believe in himself. The lights will not be too bright for Air Noland.
What kind of drills did they put him through over the weekend in the Elite 11 regional competition?
This is for anybody that you can look some of this stuff up with video. There's a lot of it, but it starts out pretty basic, just generic throws, just soft toss and this and that, and it just continually goes up. But here's the ironic part, and they told me this and some other guys too. I went to the one in Orlando, and it was super hot that day. It's one of these deals where they want to see what you're like after you're tired. They make the more difficult parts of it in the back half. Not unintentional. They even told them, like they have a little halftime session, just so you guys know this is why we're doing this. Fair enough. The other part of that is it gets into the point where it's not just like you get up, you get a hike, and you throw the ball. You'll go through like 12 throws that are rapid fire, and you are graded on accuracy, which way you threw the ball, how many steps you took, your time, every little thing. It's no different than being at the NFL Combine, but it's for high school kids. They have an accuracy gauntlet, et cetera, that you roll out against your body, whether you're left-handed or right-handed, have to flip your hips and throw it. Every single thing you can think of that somebody like the guys that just went and got drafted, CJ included, it's the same thing. CJ was actually the winner of Elite 11 a few years back before he went to Ohio State. It's the same type of deal, though. And that's important because kids get to find out, okay, am I really that good? Nolan, I knew he was probably going to get an invite anyway, but we got to about the 5th or 6th different drill, and I stopped watching him. I didn't need to. I mean, I know him well anyway. I'm like, okay, he's going to get the invite. And me and a couple of the other guys that were there, I know in the recruiting industry, were like, who else? Blah, blah, blah. We stopped watching him pretty much. It's that easy. He's that accurate. He's that consistent, and he's just trained that long. So I can't believe there's going to be too many other kids going to be as accurate as him. Do not be surprised if he ends up winning the Elite 11 finals.
Oh, you think, based off the things you have seen as far as the quarterbacks in the 2024 recruiting class, that he's has a chance to win the finals?
Oh, absolutely. It's about accuracy.
Yeah.
There are 3 or 4 guys that I know that are really talented in different ways. Like the Raiola kid that is committed to Georgia has the most pure arm talent, but he's much more raw. Like he's got a howitzer. He's not as accurate yet as Air Noland. Is he potentially better? Maybe. He's more boom or bust than Noland's the one, I guarantee you, is going to get drafted in some capacity. He needs to continue to just get bigger and stronger, blah, blah, blah. Raiola is a big kid.
Yeah.
But for this event, Noland is as good a bet as anybody to win it because he's so accurate. And again, even keel. He's not going to feel pressure. Like last year when we were at the finals in LA, Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, and CJ were standing there with the kids and talking to them and stuff. You go from talking to Bryce, 2 seconds later, you're out on the field doing the gauntlet with Bryce watching you. That's not easy for, some 16, 17-year-old kid. It's different for grown men like myself to sit there and talk to Bryce. I don't have to go out there and throw in front of him. I'm just interviewing him. It's not going to matter to Air Noland. His personality is made for this kind of stuff.
That's good to know. That's really good to know. We talked about him a while ago, but it's good to hear someone else's point of view about this talented quarterback and what he brings to the table. Who else was that? So I read. I didn't get to see the event, didn't go to the event. I read that there was, I think the Michigan quarterback commit was there at this same event as Air Noland. And, of course, you hear the Michigan, Ohio State back and forth. And you say Air Noland's not a talker. Was the other quarterback commit, was he trying to chirp at Air Noland to get him out of his game?
No, they know each other, and they had him going back-to-back in the group. And one of the counselors is a former Michigan quarterback, et cetera, and he was goofing around with him. And at the end of a couple of drills, they put him back-to-back intentionally. Let's not kid ourselves, which is cool. And he's like, well, which one's it going to be? Is it going to be the Michigan guy or Ohio State guy who's got the more accurate pass? And he was just right up on him, and they're throwing. Sometimes Jaden won, sometimes Air won, but it's the right thing to do. It's to put them through the pressure. And they're both nice kids. They're not arrogant jerks doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It was friendly competition. It was very positive.
I love that back and forth. We see it online. I know the Armstrong twins, Devontae and Deontay, and then you have Ian Moore, another O-line commit at Ohio State. They're going back and forth with guys on Twitter. I love the back and forth. I think it's healthy for the rivalry. And I even enjoy hearing about it at an event like this where these guys are competing against each other, but also it's just them showcasing their skill set as well. Already committed to the school they're going to play for in college. It happens to be rivals. So how about you say, hey, let's go out here and compete? But I love hearing that kind of stuff. Is that normal, though? Another piggyback on Air Noland before we go to the next athlete. Is that normal for at an event like this for them to put, say, an Ohio State commit and a Michigan commit, pair them up like that?
Well, it's rare to have them at the same spot because like these regionals are all around the country.
Correct.
Think about it. A Midwest school, 2 of them getting Southern kids at quarterback.
Right.
So no is probably the right answer, at least from the South.
Right.
The Ohio regional or something like that, maybe. But yeah, this is kind of an odd year because when I was talking to Air, I'm like, I know you're going to get the invite today. Who else is coming? And he said, Jaden Davis is coming. Jaden didn't get the invite. So Air outperformed him based on what Elite 11 thought, at least. I'm not surprised. Again, he is fit with his mentality and his expertise for that event. Jaden is a guy that's going to run more athletic. He's a different kind of quarterback. He's not fit for Elite 11 the same way, but he's still a highly competitive kid that's got a lot of moxie. So it'll be interesting down the road to see him play for each team.
One thing I am looking forward to that I am interested in is hearing what you have to say about Eddrick Houston. Now, I recently saw this young man standing about 6'3", about 255, defensive end from Buford High School, Buford, Georgia. This young man scheduled an official visit with Ohio State. I do believe that is the weekend of June 16th. Now, I like hearing about these talented guys. I remember last year, a little flashback before we get too deep into this, flashback talking about really talented defensive ends in the class of 2023 that Ohio State didn't get. So some people that are listening or watching this might say, oh, here we go again. Deja vu. Jay brings up a talented defensive end. Ohio State's not able to get him because Oregon or USC or Alabama or Georgia is able to get that kid off the recruiting trail away from Ohio State. We're going to get to that in a little bit, Brian. But first, the athlete, Eddrick Houston. What kind of player is he?
He is the perfect guy for like a long-term NFL team. He's a nice kid off the field, but once he puts the helmet on and steps inside the white lines, he's a very physical and violent player. I went to Buford last spring, and the first thing they did, they had some media out, and the first thing they did is the old school Oklahoma drill. And if you know anything about football,
I love it.
They had their own version of it. I forget what the heck, that Wolf Chase or something. It's the Buford Wolves or whatever. And it was like 3-on-3, and he just completely buried a kid on a play. And he's not like a huge talker, but you could tell he was pretty proud of it. And he just locked the kid out, moved him out of the way, and took out the running back. He has power that you can't teach. He is the prototypical strong side D end that can play inside at 3 technique. It doesn't matter. Long term, I expect him to be 275, 280. Look, Coach Johnson's coached a lot of guys that went on to the NFL. A lot of them looked like this coming out of high school, whether he was at Penn State or now at Ohio State. Here's the reason he has offers from everybody across the country. And it's the power. It's the transfer from power to speed. It's the agility laterally. He has the entire package. And again, great kid.
One thing that I noticed, Brian, when watching him, and I saw clips when he was rushing, the play went the opposite side, and he has to go track the guy down and make the tackle, or they run away from him, and he has to go in and recover and make the tackle. Or if it's sideline, he's going sideline. His motor never stops. Like, I'm saying all these things where I'm not describing him going after a quarterback where you expect a defensive end who's talented for his motor to be on 100 the entire time. I'm talking about things where he has to go 20, 30 yards running to just get to the ball. You mentioned the power. On these plays that I'm watching, the power is there every time. The motor's one thing, Brian, that I love about him, because I don't care how you're ranked by these recruiting databases. I want to see with my eyeballs, what's your motor like? You might not be the most talented. There's going to be different levels of talent that players have. I want to see the motor. And every time I saw him play, Brian, clips that I saw of him play, his motor never stopped.
He's got a little bit of that Bosa twin kind of mentality in that regard. I don't know if anybody's as crazy Marine-like as those two.
Right.
They're a little different. But he's in that realm, and God gave him gifts that you cannot teach. So he's not completely filled out. He was 255 last year. I imagine he's bigger than that now. I haven't seen him in a while. But Eddrick is the kind of kid that he was lean. I know it sounds goofy at 255. He's got the wide, he's got big legs, a big hip. And he can generate power. He can bend. He's the guy that's a pain to, really on 3rd and 8, like, where's their best defensive lineman? Well, if it's a very specific player, you always know he lined up at X. Eddrick can move. Coach Johnson has done a good job with that. He obviously did things with Chase Young, whether he played a 7 or 5, different spots on the line. This is no different. It's you're getting a guy that has that kind of ability to move around and make plays. That never goes out of stock, because then you dictate to the offense, not the other way around. And he's a great kid. He'll take the coaching from Johnson and the Ohio State defensive staff in general, if that's where he goes, and he'll be fine. It doesn't matter. He went to Appalachian State. He's got a chance to play in the NFL. He's so talented, but playing at a place like Ohio State against Penn State and stuff like that would prepare him. And I'm sure that's what they're selling him on.
I like to see, and Brian, as you and I get to know each other over the next few weeks about how things that pop into my mind about recruiting and guys that are playing football in high school. I love the dual sport athlete or multi-sport athlete. I say dual too, but this young man I saw wrestled at one time. I don't know if he's still wrestling. He ran in track, and I'm like, if you're a defensive end at 6'3", I might think, okay, what, you're 200 pounds, 210? No, I don't know what he weighed a year ago or even earlier this year, because I do believe this number was a junior year number. Run a 55.7 400-meter dash at 250, 255, buddy, that's moving. And I think that goes into that motor that he has. The motor you need on the wrestling mat translates to the football field. The motor you need to run that grown man race of a 400-meter dash translates to the football field. And I love how the things from other sports, Brian, he's able to bring them to the football field and help him be an amazing football player every time he plays football on Friday nights.
if you can find guys that can wrestle and run track that are over 220,
correct,
you're in good shape. Over 250, it's, son, where's your mom? I need to meet her.
You're correct. You are exactly right. That
sometimes it's not that hard.
No, I'm like, I don't run track. I used to watch and follow track meets in high school. You never saw guys that big. That was more like the big man race at the end. Get the guys out there that do shot put through discus. Hey, let's run a 4x1. We don't run it for a living. It don't matter. Let's have some fun. I did it a couple times. I could run 100 now. Would not be what it used to be, and back then it was still slow. But no, that thing to me is amazing. And you mentioned Larry Johnson. The things you're saying about him, Eddrick Houston, Larry Johnson can work with this. Now, you want to say any coach can work with it, great, but Larry Johnson can make you go from really, really good to being the best in the country at your position because of what Eddrick Houston brings to the table. So if it happens, I don't know. I'm excited about Larry Johnson potentially working with Eddrick Houston every day in Columbus.
They need to get, I know some of the Ohio State fans and their angst, they need to get a few more big-time guys. This is a chance. I mean, I don't know what his 5 to whatever visit number it's going to be because the NCAA lifted the 5.
Correct.
Yeah, no, I don't think that was a great idea, but that's another story. Whatever visits he takes, I bet you at least 2 of them are including Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, Texas A&M, et cetera, in addition to Ohio State. These are not going to be easy battles to get those kids. D linemen are always at a premium, especially if they can rush the passer. He is all of the above. So this is what Ohio State has to do to get back into that group. I think Alabama and Georgia have kind of separated themselves.
Yeah.
I know Ohio State fans don't want to hear that, but their defense hasn't been the same the last couple of years in big games. It just hasn't. This is how you change it. I mean, you can coach to a certain level, but eventually you need just, okay, my guy is better than your guy. You know, Nick Saban's talked about that forever. And whether you like him or not, it's probably a pretty good sign that that's very important. So Urban Meyer talked about it a lot too when he was at Ohio State. We need to recruit better. We need to recruit better. He was getting top 3 classes and saying that.
Yeah.
But D-line is just something you could never have enough of those guys, man. You could just never have enough of them. So Eddrick Houston would be a great fit. They've always got some good ones, but they need that guy over the top. That's what Bosa did, and that his brother did. That's what Chase Young did. That Penn State game a few years ago where they stopped him on 4th down. Who made the play? Chase Young. Special players make special plays. Eddrick Houston has a chance to be that guy.
Brian, it's been fun having you on here for the first time. If you could let everyone know where they can follow you on Twitter and also where they can read some of the things you're writing as you're following recruiting every single day.
I actually run the Miami side on Fan Nation. There's obviously a running rivalry between those 2 schools, especially with the Jeremiah Smith saga. I recently told
There was a reason why I didn't bring that up at the beginning. I didn't want people to tune you out automatically.
Oh, that's fine. I just run the site. I'm not even a Miami fan, but like Jeremiah, I told him, I said, you're not allowed to talk about Miami anymore because I just get weird text messages and stuff. I don't want to hear about it. So he just kind of smiled and laughed at me. But anyway, FB Scout _Florida actually just did a special, had Air Noland on my picture on the Miami site. Ironically, I just did an overview of all the stuff that went on there. It's all Hurricanes. If you just type in all Hurricanes, you can find it. Any kid I run into, even if he is not being recruited by the Canes, I talk about it because I just like to scout the entire state of Florida, Georgia. I've already got some games circled in different states that I'm going to go to. And you know what? It's just fun. I love high school football. So find me and check it out. I guarantee you're going to find some Ohio State information, much to the chagrin of some of my Miami subscribers.
And guys, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. Send all of your emails to jstevens317@gmail.com. It's been fun having Brian on the show. Got to hear about what he witnessed from Air Noland over the weekend, why Air Noland got that invite to the Elite 11 finals, and what makes Eddrick Houston a wanted man by the Ohio State Buckeyes. Brian, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.